Hi, I'm Dina Cataldo, a master coach and ex-criminal prosecutor. I created Be a Better Lawyer podcast for driven lawyers like you who want more from life than sitting behind a desk. You've been playing by other people's rules. Those rules have left you overwhelmed, unfulfilled, and feeling like a hamster on a wheel. I've been there. I was doing everything people told me to do to be successful, working late nights, weekends, and trying to make everyone happy. So why wasn't I happy? And I wanted more in life. When was I going to find time to find and pursue that? Well, I did, and I'm sharing with you my secrets to living a happier and more fulfilling life. This podcast gives you a lifetime of wisdom, mindset principles, and bedrock strategies to give you unshakable confidence, more time to pursue your goals, a powerful sense of purpose to up-level your life and law practice, and so much more. These are things we were never taught in law school. This podcast bridges the gap between law school and life. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, how are you doing today? I hope you're having a really good day today. I am currently in Arizona looking at properties that I am hoping will be my next home. And this kind of ties in to what I want to talk to you about today, which is creating a life for yourself, maybe from scratch, maybe from where you are right now, wanting to do something different, maybe even tweak your life in some way where you're more productive or you're making more money or you're finding more time to be with your family. Whatever that is, this is going to apply to you. And it doesn't matter where you are in your life, how old you are, how young you are, this applies to you. And this is a concept I'm going to share with you today that I was not aware of when I was practicing law, that I was not aware of when I was first starting my business. And as I began learning more about myself and getting more in touch with myself and what I wanted and how I wanted to go about doing those things, because you could go about getting what you want in a way where you're stressed out and you don't feel good about yourself, or you can do it in a way where you feel totally aligned and things feel right to you. And when I started to discover what that meant for me and understanding how I was going about my life and getting what I wanted felt really hard, like it felt like a struggle. I needed to do things differently, but what I didn't understand by doing things differently is that I was becoming the person who is more connected with myself over time. And it didn't mean that old part of me disappeared where sometimes things feel hard or sometimes I doubted myself or anything like that. What it meant was I was becoming more aware of this ancient concept of duality. If you go into ancient Chinese texts, they talk about the yin and the yang, the dark and the light, the hard and the soft, however you want to phrase it. But this is integral to our being in this world, that there is duality in all. And sometimes we can lose sight of this fact of duality in the universe because we're so caught up in the tangible, three-dimensional, day-to-day of our life, doing case matters, running from appointment to appointment, feeling in a rush, and never really touching base internally. And when you go internally, that is what allows you to get in touch with the yin part of this integral way of being. So yin and yang, we'll talk about it in that context. There has to be a balance. There has to be the hard, there has to be the soft. And then it becomes a balance. There has to be a masculine, there has to be a feminine, and then there comes to be a balance. But most of us are incredibly out of balance. I was incredibly out of balance for years. And so it was really tough. I didn't know I was out of alignment. I didn't know that there was a balance energetically that I was missing. I just thought I was doing things wrong and that I was wrong. And then I just judged myself and felt bad about myself, not understanding that part of embracing the other part of myself, the internal part of myself, the softer side of myself, was accepting that there was a part of me, the Yan part of me, that was an action taker, that was the high achiever, and to soften that and to also let myself be the receiver, to let myself be accepting and trusting that I was going to receive what it is I put out into the world and took steps on consistently to create in my life. But what we end up doing is we begin to muscle our way through life. And I believe it's because when we're younger, that's what we're taught everything is, right? You have to muscle through life. You've got to take lots of action to get what you want. You've got to work really hard. You got to stay really late at the office. And you've got to, basically tooth and nail it to create the life you want. And that's what I was taught, but that's because my parents weren't aware of this concept of duality. They didn't know anything about coaching. They didn't know anything about mindset work. And so they didn't have the tools to teach me what I needed to know to become more in balance with myself. So part of this episode is really, if you're not aware of this concept of duality, to make you aware of it and then hopefully shed a different light on how you are in the world. Because I talk about duality a lot in this podcast, but I don't come out and talk to you about it in terms of this ancient wisdom of duality, which is how we become more in tune with the universe. It's something that you begin to come awake to and feel more and more sensitively when you begin to quiet the noise in your mind. And I'm not pretending to have all the noise quieted in my mind, but I have it quiet enough that I am able to be more in alignment with what I want and how I want to be in the world. And then things become easier because I can be more trusting. I can be more accepting and receiving. But it's a practice. It is a practice like anything else. I'm here in Sedona this week, and it's amazing that I have created this. And the whole reason this podcast came into being is because I was thinking about how 2 years ago, I had set my intention to move to Sedona. And there were things that I needed to clean up in my life, things I needed to release in, my old life, and to begin to start moving the ball forward by the force of gravity, right? Moving it forward in a way that, okay, here's my intent. And then naturally things start to fall into place. Naturally, I start taking small, consistent steps. And I do that in a way that feels good, that feels in alignment, whether that's purging things from my home or changing things that I do on my day-to-day life to incorporate things that need to happen for me to prep my house for sale. I mean, those are all things that can't just be done overnight, that you want to take your time with so that it feels in alignment with what's going on. Because we don't just set an intention and then suddenly lose our old life. We actually need to incorporate what's going on in our old life, balance it out with the new, and have that alignment moving forward. Or otherwise, it's going to feel really, really hard. But anyway, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because when I set that intention 2 years ago to move, I was telling a neighbor of mine, and I was talking to him a year later, and I'd been taking small, consistent steps this whole time. And he said, "Oh, is the plan still to move to Sedona?" Like kind of incredulous. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. You were saying that like a year ago." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's all in motion." Like for me, it's like not a big deal. But I think that other people looking on the outside, they are used to people not following through on their intent. They are used to people not taking action on their dreams, and maybe they haven't taken action on their dreams. And so they enter these conversations with an energy of incredulity, of not believing, maybe not believing in themselves, maybe not believing that other people can change. But they come into a conversation with that energy, and it is out of balance with what the the intent is, right? I don't think that they intend to insult or throw doubt, but we have to stay in the energy of belief. Because they may come into a situation, and you deal with this all the time. Like every single day you're dealing with this. You've got people who maybe don't believe in you and what you want. Maybe they don't see you have what you said you wanted, a couple years ago, whatever that might be. And so anytime you say, this time it's going to be different, they kind of look at you and they're like, oh, okay, honey, kind of that same incredulity. And it's always up to us as the person who wants to create change to maintain that energy within us so that we do take those small, consistent steps, no matter what energy other people have around it, what they think, what they feel. Because if we behave as if that is impacting us, then we won't create the world that we want. We actually have to be so good with ourselves and so able to balance that doubt, and I'm going to talk more about that in a second, that it doesn't matter what other people think. And that's a tough one, right? Because so many of us, and I'm betting there's maybe you're one of these people, right? You're a recovering people pleaser. You have basically had this beautiful life, but so much of it has been built around making other people happy, and you haven't turned inwards to ask yourself, am I happy? Do I have the life that I want? When I look into my room, does my room designed the way I want it? When I walk into my office, do I have a work day that is designed to flow with what I want when I want to come into the office, when I want to leave the office? Or am I constantly reacting to the people around me and constantly shaping my life to make other people happy? And if we do that, we're denying ourselves, and we're also out of alignment. We're not in this balance of energy of the yin and the yang, right? We're not in the balance of centering ourselves, because we got to turn inwards in order to find out what we want. And then we actually have to take steps to do it, right? So you've got the yin of, okay, let me take a breath, let me sit, with my coffee in the morning, and let me intentionally think about what I want and how I want to create my life and how I want to schedule my day and, what I want my rates to be and what I want to build in my life and how I want it to look even in 5 years from now, 2 years from now. And then we need to bring in the yang energy of, okay, well, what's one small step I can take today? What is going to make it so that I can create a life that I want, a life that is going to be the life that is going to feel the way I want it to feel. We have to be thinking about, I would like a life that looks like this, and then we go and take the action. And there has to be a balance in that. And if we let other people's thoughts come in and bring in the doubt, and we're not in control of our mindset and we're not in control of our emotions around that, we can let that impact our entire life. And that is not acceptable if you want to change your life. If you want to have a life that you love, that's for you, and you get to designate your energy, your time, your money the way that you want to. So let's talk about this in terms of your practice and the yin and the yang energy. And where I see this come up so much is the belief that you have to feel certain all the time. You're supposed to feel confident all the time. You're supposed to feel joy and happiness and energetic all the time. And that would be in the light all the time, let's just say, right? There's always this light. It's always this way. And so anytime we experience doubt or we experience that fear or we experience judgment or anything like that, we mark it as wrong or bad. But that is not true at all. In fact, that is the yang, the dark, we have to look at, right? So we have these two parts of ourselves, this duality, light and dark. And we need both. We need the contrast. We need to be able to see one and the other and appreciate them both for what they are, which are simply experiences that we are having in our physicality, that we are having in our three-dimensional life. And we need to be able to balance these. So when I'm working with lawyers, we are often working on this because so many of us believe that we're supposed to be in the light all the time. We're supposed to be happy all the time. But how would we know what it's like to be happy if we didn't feel sad? And so what we need to do is we need to accept that part of us that's sad, or that part of us that's scared or uncertain, and love that part of us. And that is not something that we're taught. It's not even a concept that many of us are familiar with. I certainly was not familiar with it. But we have to love that part of ourselves so we can take this duality, these two sides of us, and make us whole, to make us complete, to have that outside perspective and understand ourselves and love ourselves as a whole, as a unit, whether we're having a good day or whether we're having a quote unquote bad day. In fact, I don't even want to call it a day. I want to call it an experience, right? We're often labeling what's an experience is good or bad when it's just an experience. So if you are trying to make your billable hours this week and you don't, we often say, oh my gosh, I'm so bad. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. What kind of lawyer am I? I'm so bad at this, right? We're total judgment. And so then we weigh heavily and we are in that dark, right? We're just full on dark. Versus if we shine a little light on it and we shine a little bit of compassion, we bring ourselves back into wholeness. We understand that, wait a minute, not making my billables is an experience. What is this experience telling me? Well, the easy thing there is saying, you know what? I don't like not billing the way I want to bill. And the experience here is trying to tell me that I need a better system, that I need a better way, or that I don't know what I'm doing and I need help. Right? The experience is trying to tell you something, but if you're so caught up judging yourself, beating yourself up, you can't question yourself. You can't question and get curious. You can't bring yourself into alignment. And that's what I do with my clients. I'm helping them come back into alignment and then learn what it is that they need to learn from whatever experience they're having, and then bring them towards the experience they want to have, but never saying, oh, it's going to be a bad thing if you don't bill. It's just understanding and reconnecting with, wait a minute, this is not the experience I want. I don't want to be up at 2 a.m, billing, trying to piece together the last month of what I did and missing so many of my hours. I want to be the person who does work and is calm and tells somebody walking in the door, hold on a second while I write down this time. And then I come back and do a conversation with that person. So this is you coming into alignment. But if you deny the experience, you try to push it away and you tell yourself, this is a bad experience, this is wrong, I'm a bad attorney, you never get to have the opportunity to change. You never give yourself the ability to move yourself forward in the way you want to, in balance with that other side of you. I want to bring this into a larger context too, because duality isn't just the emotions that we feel, but duality is a concept in the universe. Duality is a concept you can find anywhere and everywhere. Read ancient texts, you're going to find this duality in things. And one of the things I want to share with you is that if you've ever had an experience that you didn't understand or couldn't explain, that is explainable by this concept of duality. So for example, if you've ever had, like I've had a dream where I've had loved ones come to me who have passed on, and they have spoken to me and told me what I needed to hear in my dreams. I have had experiences where I've had a dream of something and then it came true the next day, and I was like, okay, that's weird. Like I'm writing these things off as coincidences, right? Everything as I was growing up, I just kind of looked at it, well, that's an interesting coincidence. You know, it's interesting that happened. There must be some scientific explanation for why that's happening. I just don't understand it. And then I would have other experiences just out in nature and, having these knowings that came out of nowhere, right? It's not like I was even thinking about them. It was just like I had knowledge suddenly dropped in my head. And what I have come to realize is that is also part of our duality. The reason that we can have those kinds of unexplainable experiences, right? Those ones that you want to write off as a coincidence, like that just, that's so weird. Like, how did that happen? Like me and my friend, we were thinking about each other at the exact same time and we called each other at the exact same time. And how is that happening? Well, there is this other part of us that is outside this 3D tangible existence. And that is the only explanation. In fact, science is beginning to come around to this as they're trying to understand how is it that AI can calculate these impossible calculations that would take a traditional computer months or years to calculate, whereas AI takes a second. How does AI do that? And what science is coming to understand is that these principles that people like Einstein have come up with, this idea of wormholes that could potentially bridge universes, right? As we're not in a single universe, there's many universes, right? This was a concept that it was in potentiality, Einstein said. He didn't come up with the idea of multiverses, but he came up with this idea of this, there's a potential wormhole that can transverse time and space, and it can be created. And other scientists have begun to see how that could potentially bridge the gap between universes. And so the theory that scientists are coming up with for how AI does these unimaginable calculations is that it is bridging the gap between multiple universes and coming up with calculations based on infinite potentialities in those infinite universes, doing that in a snap second, and then boom, coming back with the answer. Now, this is all postulation, right? Like this is what science is coming to discover, to learn. And if you're interested in this kind of field, Brian Cox is a European physicist who, if this interests you at all, you can look him up. He's done some amazing interviews. But this is the kind of thing that, for me, solidifies everything that I've come to understand from ancient wisdom, which is yin and yang. There is duality in everything. We're not just this physicality. We're also an energy that exists outside of this body, that exists and can be bridging gaps between ourselves and other people, other places, in ways that we do not fully understand or comprehend. So I want to bring this to you because if you've had these kinds of experiences, this is something that is beginning to be understood by scientists, but the ancient practitioners have always understood. They've always understood that we're more than this physicality. And so I want to bring this back into the concept of creating a life that you want. So if you're a duality, if you're a being, like a spiritual being having a physical experience in this 3D, then you have two parts of you. You have a part of you that is grounded in this physical reality, and you have a part of you that is also infinite, a part of you that is part of the infinite mind, kind of like a hive mind, if you want to say, where we're all one, right? It's one energy. And if you're familiar at all with Einstein's concepts, energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred, right? So that energy is in our body now, our physical body now, so that we can have this 3D experience. But when this body is left behind, we're off to go into the second part of our duality, right? That other part of ourselves, which is part of this grand, great mystery, the universe, multiverses, right? So there is this part of us that we can connect with, this dual part of ourselves that's not part of this 3D, but is, because we're not fully integrated. We're not fully present with ourselves. We're not fully quiet within ourselves. So we can't fully integrate. But we can get closer. And this is what people who talk about manifestation are really getting at, the ones who know what they're talking about, which is when you begin to align your three-dimensional action-taking self, the yan, right? You're the action taker, you're the high achiever, you're doing things, and you balance it with the yan, which is your higher self, that ability to see what's for your best, highest interest. It feels calm, it feels really good. Then you're able to balance these two out in a way that makes it easier for you to create in your life. And if you remember that episode I did a while back called You Are the Powerful Creator in Your Life, you are the creator, but how do you create? Do you create just in the physicality, the 3D, which is really hard, right? Like you're lifting boxes, you're picking up files, you're calling people, you're doing all the things, right? You're doing the things in the 3D world. Or are you all in the yan, which is I'm just dreaming, I'm just considering my possibilities, right? It's total yan energy. There's no action involved. Or are you balanced? Are you balanced in that, okay, I'm going to follow that higher sense of being, of where I'm supposed to be in this world in terms of, for me right now, it's location, right? It's like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be in Sedona. And then balancing it out with my actions, but doing it in a way that feels balanced, not in a way where I'm efforting so much so that I'm stressed out, that I'm overwhelmed, that I'm not accomplishing my other goals, I'm not forwarding the goals of my business, I'm not doing those kinds of things. It takes balance and practice. And so one of the things that I work with my clients on is practicing their connection with how they feel. And this is incredibly foreign to us lawyers. It definitely was for me, because that feeling you have in your body right now, when you're looking at your files on your desk, or you're driving your car and you're looking out on the road and you see somebody cut you off, that feeling you have in your body is a signal, right? So if you're feeling stressed out, pressure, overwhelm, anger, that's a signal, right? It's coming from one part of yourself. And that is telling you something about your alignment with your higher self. It's telling you there's a misalignment. And I heard this really great way of explaining this from Abraham Hicks. And it's basically anytime you feel anything that is out of love, that's not love, right? It's out of love. It's anger. It's distemper. It's annoyance. It's frustration, right? Anything, fear, outside of you feeling love and kindness and calm, it's out of alignment with your higher self, right? Because if you think about ancient wisdom, all ancient wisdom talks about love, right? Whether it is, doesn't matter what religion you're talking about, doesn't matter what ancient, Chinese practitioners, it doesn't matter, Native Americans, it all comes down to love. And when you think about it, there's even duality in the emotions that we have. So if you want to look at it this way, everything is from fear or it's from love. If you have doubt, there's fear of failure. If you have anger, there's fear of being rejected there. If you have anger, sometimes it's fear of not having enough, right? Fear of someone leaving you. I just know there's always this side of those kinds of emotions where there's a fear attached to it. Versus if you're looking at anything from love, if you feel kindness towards someone, it is a loving feeling. If you're calm and you're calmly talking through a problem with a client, it's not coming from frustration. It's just coming from a wanting of understanding what their needs are, wanting to help them, and that is love. Right? So any kind of feeling we can describe is going to have a root either in fear or in love. And so that's another part of this duality that we're experiencing in our world. And just to have that awareness of it is a beautiful thing. So coming back to talking about this duality and how we create what we want, and what Abraham Hicks was saying is that anytime you feel fear or an emotion stemming from fear, you're simply not in alignment with what your higher self believes to be true. So that's cognitive dissonance, right? So, or physical dissonance, you can feel it in your body. So if you feel fear, let's say, because I had this come up for me, is I had fear that, oh, am I making the right decision moving here? Right? And the fear came up, and rather than deny the fear, I just looked at it and I said, oh, okay, well, that's a normal feeling. Like, it would be kind of weird if I didn't feel fear, right? I've lived where I've lived for maybe, 12 years, 20 years in other places. And it makes sense that I would be experiencing some doubt as I move my location across the country. And as I experienced that, I also reminded myself of what my higher self knew, which is I needed to be moving here. And thinking about this from that higher self, not even thinking, I think thinking, we overthink things, feeling into what my higher self knew, that higher knowing, helped me remind myself, wait a minute, there's a higher knowing that I can tap into when I'm quiet within myself, and I know I'm making the right decision. And that quiet knowing is something I need to keep returning to. And then I use that higher part of myself to show compassion to that part of myself that's scared. Telling myself, of course it's normal that you'd feel scared. Of course it's normal that you'd have some doubt. It makes perfect sense. And what would you like to do? And because I know and trust that higher part of myself and my higher knowing, of course I'm moving. And that's something that took me many, many years to become comfortable doing. I did many retreats trying to look for this part of myself, right? That intuition. But it's not something that is outside of us. It's something that can only be found on the interior. And this takes us into another form of duality, which is the interior part of ourselves and the exterior part of ourselves. And it is very easy to become engrossed in the exterior part of ourselves because we look into our room and we have what we have. We have people walking into our office and they come to us with words coming out of their mouth, right? Like whether they're out of anger or out of love, doesn't matter, right? The things around us, the people around us, the consumerist culture we live in where we always need to have a new iPhone, we always got to have a new MacBook, we always got to have the latest and greatest thing. Very convenient. Right? We go to the grocery store, we can get our own food, we can order our own food. We don't even cook. A lot of us don't even cook anymore. And we don't even know what's in the foods anymore. So we've lost touch with that. So we don't go out and we don't grow our own food. We don't, have our own cows and chickens, most of us. And so we lose touch with that kind of thing, not recognizing that external that we're seeing isn't reality. Like the food has to come from somewhere. Right? The products that we purchase come from somewhere. Some of us know where they come from, some of us don't, right? And there's that part of us, that external. And there's okay, let's go to the movies. Okay, let's go have fun. Let's go do these things. I constantly need to be busy. I constantly need to be working. I've got lots of files on my desk. I got to move them. That's all external. And we spend very little time with the internal part of ourselves. We spend very little time ever connecting with that part of us that is from nature. We are literally from nature, but we are so far removed from it now. It boggles my mind when I think about it. I don't have to raise chickens. I don't have to, kill my own food. Like how blessed am I? But it also removes me from that natural part of myself, that natural part that I think we all feel when we go out into nature and we feel this sense of peace. It's because that is speaking to a higher divine nature within us that we have really separated ourselves from. And I'll also mention this. I was talking to a lawyer one time and I asked her, I was trying to ask her if she'd ever felt that feeling of awe, right? AWE, you like look at the stars and you're just in awe of how amazing life is, how large this life is, how we're part of this. And she said, I've never looked up at the stars. And I want to let that sink in, because maybe there are things that you've never done. Maybe you've never looked up at the stars. Maybe you've never gone into nature and just listened. Listen to the birds, listen to the wind as it blows through leaves. That is part of the duality we deny within ourselves. And until we balance this duality, we make our lives really hard. Everything becomes a struggle. And balancing requires you to get to know you. Know thyself. That's one of the ancient proverbs from ancient Greece, is know thyself. But very few of us know ourselves. I don't even know myself completely. And I know that I've been doing this work for many years, and I know there's so much more for me to discover. And that's part of what life is. It's this vast discovery of one layer upon another layer. But if we are constantly in the doing, the three-dimensional doing, where we feel hustly and there's pressure and we're killing ourselves to get work done, we never create the connection to ourselves, which so many of us are desiring, which is that connection with ourselves, that is that intuition, that knowing, that part of us that knows what needs to be done and does it, the part of us that realizes that how we're living our life right now is not working and we need to do it differently, that part of ourselves that wakes up in the morning, like I did for so long, feeling so anxious and overwhelmed and hating the way I felt in my body and not knowing what to do about it. That's disconnection. That's a total disconnection from ourselves, our inner selves. And so one of the things I want to offer to you is that you begin to make friends with the quiet part of you. You begin to slow down internally, and that can feel kind of scary. That's okay. We don't have to deny the fear, but we do have to see that that's a signal. It's a signal that you must get quiet. The fear is not a signal to stop. The doubt is not a signal to stop. It's not to say that you're on the wrong path at all. In fact, you are going to have doubt. You're going to have fear every step of the way. What is required is that you make friends with it and that you sit anyway with yourself. And this is why it's so scary for people to sit in contemplation, whether it's meditation or sitting quietly without scrolling their phone and just breathing, putting their attention on their breath, is because they're so afraid that they are doing it wrong, or they're having thoughts and the thoughts are wrong and they shouldn't be having thoughts. No, that's exactly what's supposed to be happening. Part of what meditation is, part of what sitting just in quiet contemplation with your coffee is learning about yourself and how your mind works and where it goes and what you're actually thinking and how you're actually feeling. But you can never connect with that if you let the fear to drive you. That's like just being in the yawn. It's just being in the dark. That's it. You're in the dark. And you can't shine light on your higher consciousness until you make friends, until you make peace with that. So what I want to end this with is sharing with you what I do to help my clients. Because if you are feeling like life is a struggle, that things are really hard, that creating the life you want, designing it the way you want is really hard, then I want to invite you to work with me. Because this is the work that I do with my clients, is help them align themselves with what they want and balance themselves so that they can have it. That's why when I talk about how do you make money simpler in your practice, how do you make time, how do you make peace with time in your practice? What we're doing is we're balancing the yin and the yang energy. You're learning the skill of being with yourself, of knowing yourself on a deeper level. And I do that using the coaching skills, right? Because this is one part scientific method, one part ancient wisdom. And if you're not feeling connected within yourself and you're feeling busy all the time, then you have this opportunity in your life to reconnect, to have the experience of knowing yourself on a deeper level, of loving yourself on a deeper level, of having more of the life that you want, but feeling good while having it, not stressing over it, not struggling over it, and making friends with all of those emotions that you're going to experience. That is the work that we do in coaching, my friend. So I want to encourage you to book a strategy session with me at dinacataldo.com/strategy session. That's dinacataldo.com/strategy session. And we will talk about where you are right now and where you want to be. And we will start to talk about what we're going to do together to help you get there. All right, my friend, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.